we we've really needed good friends over the past few years, and many have stepped forward to help us keep going during a very difficult period of time. An administration that did not believe in refugee resettlement, and in fact tried its hardest to destroy the refugee resettlement program. And then a pandemic, but we got through both. And in fact, strangely, ironically, or maybe not so ironically, IRIS actually grew during these years and expanded its services. We said, as soon as the Trump administration came to town, we said, look, if they're not going to be bringing more refugees, we are going to do more with the people who are already here. And we expanded, especially our education program. We also said, if the official State Department refugee program is not going to be bringing more refugees, then we will do more with immigrants who are already here in our community and need help. So we expanded our services. We swung open our doors to asylum seekers and undocumented immigrants. When the pandemic hit, we saw there were a lot of people in dire need. So we quadrupled the size of our food pantry, and we raised funds, including from people like you, to help people stay in their homes, to avoid eviction and avoid falling deep into debt. So it's been a really busy time. We've actually outgrown our current office. We're trying to buy a new office in New Haven to give us much more space, so we can do much more. We'll be opening a satellite office, a small office in Hartford. We haven't made final decisions as to how many people will be there and exactly what those jobs will be, but we do know that we need to have a presence, a physical presence in Hartford, in order to better serve the refugee and immigrant community there. So there's a lot happening. If you speak with refugees who have come to the United States, many of them will say, you know, I left a part of the world where I could at least speak the language. I know I'm never going to learn English. I had much more status in my home country, but I've took the risk our lives, the lives of my family members, to come to the United States for the future of my children. So many refugees say this. So it really behooves a refugee resettlement agency to do more than just the bare minimum of enrolling kids in school and reminding a principal or a school district of their legal obligation to educate the refugee and other immigrant children. At IRIS, we've always gone much further than that. We've educated school districts, faculty and teachers about who these children are and what their special needs are. We have provided tutoring, an after-school program that you're going to learn about today, and then also a large summer learning program. And I am really proud of the work that we do in education, because it just means so much to the families that we're serving. And we have excellent staff. We're really lucky to attract really talented, creative people. And I'm going to introduce one of them right now. His name is Sammy Colón. And Sammy, you're going to take it from here, and you are later going to introduce your co-coordinator, Rachel Calnek-Sugin, right? Okay, but Sammy, you're on next. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Chris. I'm excited to be here, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and for your time. But yeah, I'm gonna get started talking about IRIS education. So at IRIS, we have a lot of different programs in our education department. And those programs stem from all these programs listed here, which include family literacy, where families and children are able to practice English and pre-English skills. Moms are able to learn activities to do with their children. We have our summer learning program, which is coming up for K through 12 students and recent arrivals, where they're able to practice English, kind of get extra supplemental support in their education. We have in-school one-to-one tutoring, our youth mentorship programs, where there's a young men's group as well and a young women's group. And those two groups meet primarily high school age students where they're able to commune and have guest speakers talk about different career paths and choices. There is school enrollment help where we help IRIS clients enroll in New Haven public school system, in the public school system, higher education help, adult ESOL classes for English language learners, also our after school program, which is what me and my co-program manager, Rachel, are going to be talking about with you all today. And I know both of us are very excited to share with you a little bit about what we do and what our kids do mainly, and the incredible art and work that they're putting together and making in our program. But yeah, I'll go ahead and now introduce my co-program manager, Rachel, to talk now.
Thank you, Sammy. Yes, would echo that we're so delighted to be here talking about our wonderful students who I think, yeah, especially as the school year winds to a close, I think Sammy and I are just feeling such immense pride for the people they are and the work they've created and the community that they've made this year. So if we can go to the next slide. Cool. So yeah, just to give you all a brief overview of who's in our program, we currently have, I guess, 37 students enrolled. That has fluctuated a bit throughout the year. And it's a very diverse group, as you can see here. Some of our students arrived super recently, and some have been in the US for a little longer. That means also, as you could imagine, really different levels of English proficiency. We have students from 10 different countries, and between us, we speak 10 different languages. So I think it's pretty amazing to see those relationships formed between students from very different places, as well as to see, students who realize after months together on Zoom that they actually do speak the same first language, and that maybe one can help translate the instructions for something to another, or they can just have, private gossip that some of the adults can't understand through the Zoom. And yeah, in addition to our amazing students, we also have more than 40 volunteers who work with us in the after school program. That's been a really critical part of the program this year, especially as it's been remote, which we'll tell you a little bit more about in a minute. But yeah, our volunteers really have established amazing one-on-one relationships with these students. The students often come in and request what volunteer they want to work with because they've just established such powerful bonds. And like our students, our volunteers are a really diverse group from all over the US and Connecticut, and we are able to cultivate a lot of different interests and passions together, I think really because of all the places we all come from. So yeah, I think Sammy is now going to tell you a little bit about what after school looked like last year, pre-pandemic.
Yeah, so these are just some photos from after school last year, as Rachel said. This was when we were meeting in person. We met at Bethesda Lutheran Church in East Rock. There were this is great, a great venue for the program, where they let us use their rooms and facilities and their instruments, such as their pianos. The program looked very, the program has changed a lot throughout the years, as Rachel said. The program, too, as you all may know, is about, is 3 years old now. It started in 2018, and it started primarily as a music program, with academic enrichment help as well. But since then, it's grown to include just a plethora of different art forms with the help of our amazing volunteers that help teach all sorts of lessons. But one of the first sort of art curriculums to be included in the program was piano. And I teach piano at the after school program. And it's just such a joy getting to work with the kids and see them just sort of explore their interest in piano or pursue piano to greater lengths and learn full songs. But yeah, this is some of our students learning piano. We can go to the next slide. Another arts elective that we were able to have in our second year of after school, as we expanded to other electives and were able to have more volunteer teachers with much more diverse backgrounds in arts education, was yoga, which these students are doing outside together. We can go to the next slide. Another example is martial arts, which was really exciting to be able to do together indoors. And we had to be very flexible with the space as well, and sort of repurpose certain rooms at times to incorporate our arts elective, or maybe use a room for one arts elective one day and for another day. But the schedule was also always a rotating schedule of arts electives. So there was a lot of variability in the structure, and there still is today. But yeah, we can go to the next slide. Another amazing arts elective that so many students love and excel at so much is creative writing. Here we have a couple of our students working on creative writing projects. The students have made so much amazing creative writing work, especially in the past year, some of which you'll get to see, and a lot of which as well is that is available on our website that you all are welcome to check out at any point. But we are so proud of our students and the way they've excelled in their English proficiency and their writing ability, and in their creative writing ability especially too. We can go to the next slide. And yeah, so once COVID-19 came about and started making its way over to the United States last year, we had to very abruptly change pretty much our entire program. We had to sort of stop with, less than a week's notice, having in-person programming, and quickly adjust our program entirely to a different format. And that adjustment had different sort of phases to it, where we were trying to sort out the best format through which to engage with the kids in a similar fashion to which we were engaging with the kids before in person, and through a little bit of trial and error, and trying and through a dialogue as well with the students and what their wants were out of the program, we were able to settle on a program format that was based in Zoom. And we since then have been meeting on Zoom due to distance learning coming about. And yeah, this is just a sort of screenshot of a room in a Zoom meeting where students are showcasing their art. But yeah, it's been really just incredible to see how much of the sort of social and communal facets of our program we were able to retain throughout the pandemic. by working on Zoom and using the different features of Zoom and of technology to be able to engage with students from a distance as much as possible in spite of these new circumstances that we found ourselves in and that the world has found itself in. But yeah, we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Here's another still of a room in our Zoom meeting. The students love interacting over Zoom. We use breakout rooms to facilitate different electives. We'll talk more about the program structure in a little bit. But here I believe the students are doing a bit of dance. The students also love playing games and sharing different things they've been working on, different media on their computers that they love. But yeah, feel free, I think we can go to the next slide. And now, thankfully, we are starting to meet in person again. So up until very recently, from Monday to Friday, we have been meeting virtually, but now a couple days a week, we are starting to meet in person. I'm gonna turn it over to my co-manager, Rachel, now to talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Sammy. That was an awesome overview, I think, of what this weird year has felt like a little bit. Like Sammy said, we basically have spent the whole year on Zoom until it got nice enough out to do some weekly meetings in the park, like the one that you've seen here, which have really been a blissful respite from all the online times. But yeah, I think when we sort of found our rhythm with the Zoom learning, what that started to look like was everyone logging on at 3:30. And kids would go to breakout rooms, one-on-one or two-on-one with volunteer tutors to work on homework. If they didn't have homework, we would do other sorts of enrichment activities. And then in the second half of the day, just like we did last year in person, we would split off into breakout rooms to do those arts activities that you saw in the previous screenshot. So things like art and writing and dance. And yeah, and like Sammy said, it's really been incredible to see the community that has been cultivated even on Zoom. I know that, New Haven Public School kids only started going in person to school in March. And I think I was astounded throughout the year to see that after a whole day of online school, kids seem to want to come to after school online also. I was like, aren't you guys sick of Zoom? But I think that the relationships that they had with each other, the sort of individual attention that they got, and yeah, the ways that I hope we tapped their creativity and wanted to roll with that, made them want to keep coming back. So Sammy and I now have the pleasure of being able to share with you a couple of the projects that our students have worked on this year. So I know that he mentioned our after school website, and I'm going to share that with you all right now. We'll also pop the link in the chat so that if you want to further explore some different projects we've worked on, you can feel free to do that later. But here we go. I'm going to start by sharing with you one of our projects in our world of storytelling. So I'm a writer and I do a lot of storytelling work of different kinds, not just writing based stuff, but a lot of oral history work and also movement and theater based storytelling. As you can imagine, these kids have some wild and wonderful stories, both personal and from their imaginations. And so, yeah, it is an honor to share with you a little bit of that. So one of the projects that we worked on was we wrote 6-word memoirs, which was sort of, I don't know, a movement that swept the nation a few years ago. And the idea of it basically was to write about your life in only 6 words. And so we started out by brainstorming important places, moments, relationships in our lives. and then thinking about how to distill them in different ways with words, with movements, and work together to come up with 6-word memoirs for a lot of the students. So up here, some of the students also illustrated theirs. This is our amazing student, Manile, whose 6-word memoir reads, "I smile so they don't know." And she drew this amazing rainbow self-portrait with colored pencils and watercolors. Also, side note is that while we were remote, we did deliveries of supplies every other week so that kids would be able to participate in projects like this. And we tried to make the supplies we delivered the things that would be needed for the lesson so that it was cohesive. And I'm just gonna scroll down and read you a few more because I think they give you a tiny sense, a little nugget of the worlds of our students. So never give up no matter what. Iris after school feels like home. All my life was in Kabul. Live the way you want to. I have my beliefs in unicorns. We miss our friends in Kabul. World's in danger, can't be fixed. Always do what makes you happy. I like playing games and eating. If you are sad, be strong. It doesn't matter about the outside. So yeah, just wanted to share with you guys that taste of some of the stories of our students. And now I'm gonna hand it over to Sammy to share a music project. Can you all see the Soundtrap screen right now? Okay, sweet. I'll use Sammy.
Awesome. Yeah. So music has been a really interesting thing to sort of explore with the students across the years, especially given the limitations of COVID. The way we obviously teach anything, but has changed, but especially music. I feel like that's true for. Upon like kind of getting to see the limitations firsthand of music education over Zoom, which is specifically that I feel like it can be a bit more challenging to engage with students as personally or specifically in terms of learning instruments specifically. And so among those challenges were that, as well as like different degrees of accessibility for music. For certain students, sometimes maybe a connection is slower, or maybe they're not as proficient as other students in a certain instrument or in music, or maybe they're somewhat interested in music, but not interested in learning too in-depth about music. So there's a lot of variability in students' wants to learn music in the same space, as well as the ability, as well as limitations to teaching students as directly as we were able to in the past. So one of our volunteers recommended this platform known as Soundtrap. And Soundtrap is pretty much an online website-based application that is pretty much like a digital audio workstation that is accessible online to groups of people at a time. So a digital audio workstation is pretty much software that's used to record music. So it just pretty much functions by recording individual recordings and stacking them on top of each other to make a song at the end. And so this is one of the Soundtrap projects or songs that our class made together that the students wrote. And the way we kind of approached different degrees of proficiency in music amongst our class and different degrees of interest in music was we kind of let students guide the project, like sculpt it to how they wanted it to be. And me and a couple of our lovely volunteers, Sophia and Olivia, who play violin, helped sculpt the song into what it is. And there are also all sorts of contributions and percussion and vocals by students. The students set the theme of the song, they wrote the lyrics. There are a couple of freestyles as well, freestyle raps done by students in the song. And it's just so great seeing students open up in music and be willing to express themselves in ways that they haven't before, which I think happened quite a bit on this song. So this song is called Try Your Best, and to give you some background as to what the students wanted the song to be about, the song is about trying your best and essentially doing the best you can in school specifically and in life in general. And the song, before getting to the theme of the song, a question I asked the students was if they wanted the song to be a happy song or a sad song. I think those are two specific delineations in music that we see a lot, is major and minor. And they chose for it to be a sad song and a bit dramatic. So it is a minor song and it is a little bit intense. And the theme is trying your best. And there, I think, are sad elements to the lyrics, but there's also a sort of like encouragement to the lyrics as well, to actually try your best, and a message of doing your best despite difficulties and despite hardships. And there's also kind of a resoluteness, I think, to the song as well, in maintaining your happiness and your sense of self in trying your best despite those difficulties. But I think the song ended up beautiful, and I'm so excited to share the song with you. And we'll just go ahead and take a listen. Some parts, again, are written deliberately, like the choruses of the song that repeat, but other parts are freestyled. And then there's a part at the end that I'm sure all of you will, or many of you will recognize. But yeah, we can go ahead and listen to the song. It's called Try Your Best.
Nothing ever makes sense. I'm not feeling alright. Staying up till sunrise, and I know all this stuff is okay. Pretending we know things.
Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy.
So one of our students, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the song Happy by Pharrell Williams, had that song come to mind while we were working on the project one day and just started recording the lyrics of the song and herself speaking those lyrics instead of singing them. And we thought that it fit so beautifully at the end over the violin. I just think it fits and suits the song so beautifully. And the lyrics over the sad chord structure of the song just kind of changes the meaning of the lyrics entirely, I think, to mean something completely new. And the kids really loved having that sort of ending with the violin, and those lyrics sort of superimposed on each other. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the song. I also am going to throw the lyrics of the chorus into the chat so you all can read them.
Sammy and Rachel, thank you so much. That was such a wonderful presentation. If it's okay with you guys, I can move on to the Q&A. We've had some questions in the chat. We've also had some questions submitted prior to this event. So I'll just go through the chat first, and feel free if anyone wants to raise their hand or unmute themselves. Like, we have a small group here, so I think we could totally just do some Q&A that way as well. So Paulette had a question. How did the kids get from school to the after school program, I guess, when it's not on Zoom?
A great question, Paulette. We worked with the New Haven Public Schools to get the kids to us on buses. So yeah, basically they came on the school bus, which was great. More difficult was the question of how could they get home, because we wanted the program to be accessible to families that where parents were working or didn't have cars. So that was a dance every day. And yeah, certainly a dream to figure that out in a more consistent way when after school is once again in person. But it was great to have school buses take the kids to us.
Thanks, Rachel. So Wendy had a question. I hope you saw Chris answered it in the chat. It was, is the space rented or donated? And then Chris said it's rented below market rate, and we would love to have an office that's large enough to accommodate all our programs, like our after school program. Joe had a question. Are there new aspects of this past year's curriculum that worked out so well that you'll hold on to them, ways of interacting, etc.?
I think interacting with certain platforms and an openness to different forms of teaching, like for example, through Soundtrap, and working communally on projects like that, and being able to work from home, because a lot of students, for example, for those music projects specifically, contributed to those projects on their own time and their own home and their own space. And so I think kind of being open to different platforms and different ways about collaborating on artistic endeavors with the students is something that we'll likely consider more going forward, and going back especially to programming in person.
As you could imagine, when you're in person with classrooms, there's a lot more chaos, and I love a little bit of that chaos and think it belongs in every after school program and every out of school kid space, certainly. But I think it was wonderful to have basically a one-on-one volunteer ratio for really getting homework help done. And it was wonderful to be able to send kids to breakout rooms and really have them in their separate spaces. And I think that, like, as we think about shaping the program for next year, those sort of less literal things and translating some of them into in-person, like, that will certainly come into play. And I wonder how the education world is going to be and is thinking about those things.
Yeah, can I kind of ask a question off of that? Did you notice, Rachel and Sammy, that any kids that kind of came out and became more expressive through Zoom? Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. And I think there was just kind of a lot less behavioral issues on Zoom specifically. And I think, just to be blunt about it, but I think that comes in part from these students being at their parents' homes. I mean, their parents are nearby. So those variables become much lessened in a context like that. But yeah, I think in part, like, that, among many other things, led to certain students really like opening up, really expressing themselves, and really becoming a lot more confident in talking to other students, sharing their opinions, things that they've worked on. And yeah, I think I would totally second everything Rachel said, that would be super valuable to translate to an in-person context as much as we can, and as much as we're able to. But
okay, Paulette had two questions. What kinds of programming are on your wish list? And I think she was asking, oh, when will the programming start in person again?
Something that we were able to start integrating this spring that I would love to do more of was sort of having some in-house mental health resources for the students. So we had this really awesome art therapist who has been joining us once a week, and she's been meeting one-on-one with students to talk with them, do little projects with them. And I think it would be really wonderful to have more support like that, whether it's music therapy or art therapy as like just a core part of the curriculum. And yeah, just making sure that our students who, you know, we have this privilege of just being adults who know what's up with them. So being able to also get them help they need in the program would be really awesome. It's on the wish list for me. Is there anything you can think of, Sammy?
A lot of volunteer support in person for the next year is a big wish list for me. And also, just having continued good leadership and interns to help support the program in the coming academic year as we transition back to being in person. Yeah, I think those are kind of the biggest items on my wish list specifically.
And as for when we're going back in person, we have been meeting in person every Wednesday and now on Fridays also. So yeah, just like you saw in the picture, we're in the park. It's a lot of play in those times, which is, I think, really needed. Over the summer, we're gonna stay in touch by also meeting one afternoon a week. We're gonna do some sort of fun educational-ish field trips. And then I imagine that come fall, we would be fully in person unless it's decided that like it benefits the program to keep some sort of small hybrid element. But I mean, fingers crossed that is what the world looks like in September.
So Jan was asking, any chance of doing this after school programming in Hartford? Chris says yes, eventually. I don't know if you want to expand on that, Chris, but
yeah, I mean, we would love to do the things that we've been doing well in New Haven, in Hartford, because you know, we don't feel we would have to reinvent things. It's just you know, it's been really successful in New Haven, so why mess with something that's successful? Let's just try to find some great people in Hartford who will do something similar. So yeah, I would love to do that. Sammy or Rachel, what do you guys do over the summer? Are you absorbed into the summer learning program?
So over the summer, I usually am absorbed into the summer learning program. Currently, I'm actually based in Jacksonville, Florida, though. So I'm not physically in Connecticut. So I won't be doing the summer learning program this year as it's occurring in person, but I'll be helping out with little auxiliary things at Iris. And here where I'm based in Florida, I will be also teaching music to students across North Florida.
Great. So we'll see. Maybe we'll ask Rachel to, in addition to everything else she's doing, help us organize and launch an after-school program in Hartford in the coming year.
So Wendy had a question. Have any of the volunteers immigrated to the US as refugees or otherwise, or college students from other countries?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually had one of our 2 interns this year was actually Zooming in from Nicaragua for the whole fall because she was home with her family from college because of the pandemic. But yes, many of our volunteers and interns are immigrants themselves from different places.
And this question was submitted beforehand. It's from Adam. Chris, this might be good for you to answer. What is expected for immigration in the next year?
Yeah, I just realized I really didn't talk about what we're looking forward to in the future after the 4 years of pretty horrendous foreign policy when it comes to immigration and refugees. So the Biden administration has promised a dramatic increase in the number of refugees, more than 100,000 per year, compared to the 15,000 that the Trump administration was setting as our goal. So the goal has gone from 15,000 way up to over 100,000. Unfortunately, we're not going to see that materialize immediately because so much damage was done to the overseas infrastructure in particular. So it's going to take a while for it to get up and start running again, hiring staff, setting up interview stations, and getting refugees, into that process, referred to as a pipeline, before they start arriving in the United States. But we're looking forward to a very busy year next year, and we're going to reactivate that community-based resettlement model that we've used so efficiently in Connecticut, where volunteers come together in communities and they're trained, and then we place a refugee family with them, and they handle everything, including enrolling the kids in school in their community, and arranging tutors and getting kids into after-school programs there, wherever it is, Middletown, Branford, New London, wherever. So it's going to be busy, and we will continue at the same time. We'll continue to do all of the work that we're doing with asylum seekers and undocumented immigrants. So there's a lot out there that we're going to need help with, and government gives us funding for some of the work that we do, but I have to say some of the more exciting and creative work that we're doing in the area of education, that's all private funded. Rachel mentioned they love working with this art therapist. That was private funded. There is no federal program that provides art therapy. So we're going to be busy. And with this expansion into Hartford, even busier.
Okay, I have 2 more questions. These were submitted beforehand, unless anyone wants to add more to the chat. One question is from Craig. He said, what has inspired you the most in the past 15 months?
This is kind of a very general answer, but it really has to just be like the collective work of the students in the program, like just the amount of effort they've put into making all of this work together, despite the circumstances of the pandemic and having to be online on Zoom, not having to be, but choosing to be rather online on Zoom after school, after being already online for school, at home. I mean, it's pretty exhausting, I think, especially for young kids to do all of that. On top of that, produce all of the artwork and all the beautiful pieces they've produced across the last 15 months. At the moment, Rachel and I are working on putting together a book for the kids for the end of the year to sort of celebrate all of their work and to give to them to take home and to keep. And as you know, we're seeing that book come to fruition, it's just extremely beautiful and moving to see all of that art in one place. And yeah, I think that that for me has been the most inspiring thing, easily.
One of our longtime students, Tess Neem, who we've known for a couple of years, is an incredibly multi-talented person. She is 13 years old, and we worked together on writing an essay about what she dreams of for herself, for the world, which she submitted to this contest for New Haven Public School students and ultimately won. And obviously I'm proud of her for winning the contest. That's really awesome. It feels really good to get that affirmation. But more so, I am just proud of her for the work that she put into cultivating this this piece about herself, and for the message that she sent me after she submitted it, saying, you know, ultimately it doesn't really matter if I win. I'm just so glad that I worked so hard on this. And really for the content of the piece, which you can read on the website, it's about a page long if you're interested, because it's really about, you know, it's about her journey from Syria to Jordan to the US, but more than that, it's about like her journey to becoming somebody who's really confident and sure of herself, and how, like, what K-pop had to do with that. And I think that just, you know, Tess Neem wrote it so beautifully, but that journey of confidence and like finding one's specific self is one that I think we've been really lucky to see a lot of these kids going through as they settle into their lives here and their, you know, little preteen selves or whatever. And so that has made me feel certainly really inspired as well.
That was awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Rachel and Sammy. I have one last question. So the question is, what are your biggest hurdles and key to your success? Is America the land of opportunity? And that is from Joe Standard.
Well, it relates to what I was mentioning earlier. I often used to say, especially when it became fashionable to complain that the American dream is dead, I used to remind people, well, if you ever want to see the American dream in action, then come to my office, come to Iris, come to the after school program. These are people who, you know, have come here not just to save their lives, but to have incredible opportunities that they would not otherwise have in their countries. And again, it goes back to education and why it is so important for a refugee resettlement agency to do as much as it possibly can with children and help them with their education. I mean, our mission in the education department is to provide the best educational opportunities we possibly can for these kids. And we don't have the resources to you know, do as much as we'd like to do, but we're doing, you know, much more than the average refugee agency, and it's just essential. It's so important, and many of the people on the screen now have recognized that, agree with that, and have supported us. So you know, thank you for doing that. So yes, it is happening, and again, when we are fully open again and this pandemic is more under control, I really would love for all of you to come in, visit the after school program, take a walk through the summer learning program, and not just talk to me and my colleagues, the staff, but we'll sit you down with some of these amazing kids that Rachel and Sammy are so inspired by, and you'll be inspired by them too.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Tabitha. Thank you, Sammy and Rachel, even someone who works at Iris. That was so inspiring and informative for me to hear. So thank you for sharing all about all of your hard work and what our students, you know, have accomplished. We do have an event coming up. It's on June 26th. If you're in the Hamden area, it's a poetry slam and storytelling event in honor of World Refugee Day. And actually, Rachel is mentoring one or two of her students from the after school program who will be performing some poetry. So if you want want to see our students in person, this is a really great chance. It's our first event since the pandemic, so we're really excited. And it's a great chance to meet some of these young students and see them perform in person and kind of see, it's really interesting because some of our storytellers, it's also a partnership with Sanctuary Kitchen, and some of these storytellers will be up there on stage, speaking, and some of them didn't even know English when they got here, and now they're going to be on stage doing a performance. So it's going to be quite amazing. I will put the link to the event in the group chat. I will also send a follow-up email, which will have a recording of this session, as well as the ticket link.